co-founder of Apollo Global Management, also settled a lawsuit with the U.S. Virgin Islands for $62.5 million to avoid potential lawsuits. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, but that's all he was, right? Just tax advice, sure. But you see, if we trace, it's not easy. It's not difficult, guys, to figure out how to play this chessboard thing that we're looking at. If you study history and you see the role of Rockefeller, and then you see somebody like Leon Black or Leslie Wexner connected to, let's say, Jeff was outed. Wasn't he outed by Alexander Acosta, who said, I was told to back off, that he was, belonged to
Above his pay
intelligence?
grade. Yeah, above his pay
Yeah.
grade.
So, like,
Yeah.
you look at the people around him, that, or anyone in the future, because this will happen again, I assure you, and see who's connected to whom, and then use the Rockefeller um, sort of like that playbook, and look at these people differently, and then see what else they've done, and that will give you the stones to start connecting these dots easily, without you depending on mainstream will never tell you, so you have to figure it out either by listening to Sean or me or other people like us. But anyway, Clive Davis, we're getting to him, born on April 4th, 1932. He was actually the protege of Meyer Lansky. And by the way, I live on the Upper West Side of New York City, and I live very close to a place that both Wexy and Clive Davis keep an apartment at. And that is, they keep an apartment at 15 Central Park West. It is on 59th Street. And so we have Wexy, who purchased an apartment there many years ago for his mother in law. And then we have Clive Davis, who loves that apartment. It's got, and you know why they love it, Sean?
Why?
I didn't send you a picture, but I will. Not now, because I don't know how to do two things at once here. But because, like, there are some buildings that have an inner courtyard that you don't have to, like, get out of your car on the street. There has an inner courtyard, so the car can kind of pull in and nobody sees you. And so it offers them that privacy. But to think that Wexner and Clive Davis have an apartment in the same building is really, and it's walking distance to Jay-Z has an apartment on 57th Street. And I wasn't going to share this, but should I?
Yes, please do.
Well, this is not even anything I shared with anybody yet, but so you guys are the first to hear. There's a man by the name of Bernie Kornfeld who helped Hugh Hefner with the tunnels under the Hefner mansion in California. Bernie Kornfeld had also a group of very young girls as his, let's call it harem, but these were very young girls. There are photographs you can probably pull up. When Jay-Z was arrested for that stabbing incident that I'm not going to go into, there was a mugshot taken of him, and it showed the address of 152 West 57th Street. I happen to know from other sources that I will not reveal that that building does not only have family members of Bernie Kornfeld who helped Hefner and other things with the tunnels that in fact reach into other properties, right? So that, and the only way you can have access to a property in that building is to be an insider. So Jay-Z is frankly above many people to have been allowed that. That said, having these apartments like Clive Davis having one on 59th Street, it's walking distance to many places. Let's say walking distance to Trump Tower, walking distance to many places where all of these guys congregate. So in any event, to get back to Davis, he attended Harvard Law School in 1956, and then he began working for a law firm that represented CBS. And then they inquired when he was working as an attorney, as a young attorney, if he wanted to come and work for them as their in-house attorney. And he's like, yeah. And that was in 1965. And then by 1967, he becomes the president. He too had, let's say, a mentor, but we're not going to get into him today because I want to tell you so much. Time only permits. So, but I'm going to tell you, he's credited with discovering, among others, Janis Joplin, Carlos Santana, The Grateful Dead, Billy Joel, Aretha Franklin, Bruce Springsteen, Herbie Hancock, Rod Stewart, Prince, Aerosmith, Whitney Houston, God rest her soul, Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, Luther Vandross, Patti Smith, Alicia Keys, Usher, and many others. So at one point in an interview, Clive was asked that working in hip hop is a long way from, let's say, working with Barry Manilow. And so the question was, what was it like creating the hip hop label The Face back in 1989? And he, he is the best marketer. I mean, this guy knows every trick. So he said, I've always tried to supplement what I could do with the greater expertise of others. Knowing that R&B music was changing and that hip hop was arriving, I turned to LaFace, whose name is Kenneth Edmonds, to develop TLC and, the other one. And then, of course, he credits him for Usher and Pink. And then, are you aware that he is still going to host his pre-Grammy parties despite the raging fires in California?
No, I was not aware.
But doesn't it scream Satani? Because everybody else, almost all of the other people who have parties and companies, they said they will not have celebrations this year because of the fires. Clive Davis, who was 92 people, 92, he's like, no, the party is on, of course, because he is. I look at him and I see little horns coming out of his head, a little tail. But and guess who's going to be there? Jay-Z with his wife Beyonce. So yeah, he's going to have the party. So now, guys, in 1973, Davis is suddenly fired from CBS. William Paley has been pretty much put into the hot seat. He has to fire Clive Davis in 1973, although they're basically doing the same thing, and one hand washes the other. But he is fired along with another person that I'll name and some other people connected to Mafia for basically they claim it's improperly misappropriating funds to influence DJs into playing specifically Black music. The reason he wants to do this is to infiltrate the Black communities, right? Because you want every segment of the population to be able to control them through the use of music. And so the way that they were doing it is not dissimilar from the way it had been done 20 years earlier or 40 years earlier, but they discovered that Davis and others paid in the form of, let's say, substance and how do we call them? Entertainers of a very personal nature. How would we call that?
Adult entertainers?
Yes. Well, who do the deed.
Yeah, ladies of the night or men of the night?
Yes, these people and of all ages, okay, to provide them free of charge, clearly, because you want to do that, not just to the DJs, but also to the musicians. And why to the musicians? To keep them in line. Not just keep them in line because, let's say, you get somebody like Janis Joplin hooked on drugs, right? And then conveniently there's an overdose, right? But also because you have blackmail material and or they don't get far. They just, if they don't toe the line, so they use this as a tool to grease the wheels, to have the music play. So we have not music, let's say, that was everybody fell in love with and ran out and bought. We have music that was paid for, people were bribed. So, but this eventually got out, and he was in the middle of this really horrific scandal. Now, it happened in 1973 at the same time that the Watergate. Remember Watergate?
Yep, the plumbers.
Yeah, Richard Nixon, the crowd. Do you know that this was front page news next to Watergate, and it almost kicked Watergate off the front page?
Wow.
It was a very big thing. So there were these conventions that CBS had for their people, let's say. And again, that very famous hooker called the Indian, the events called the circus. Now we can only imagine what happened at their circus events, right? Like wink, wink. And the prevalence at these conventions of drugs and spiked drinks. So people who were basically yes men around our friend Clive Davis were like, oh, how could he be part of anything like this? You can't even say, let's say, call it a green, right?
Yep, the green, yep.
You can't even say green around him because he's such a straight-laced guy. And but the reality was that he was anything but. So, like, from the very first rumors, there was talk of this very mysterious receptionist, which, by the way, disappeared. Her name was Fran. Fran, rest in peace, because I'm sure they didn't let you go peacefully into whatever. But apparently she used to show up repeatedly at work at CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting thing run by Clive. And she would be, let's say, she would have substances in her system. And she would be the one, however, who would be taking the call. So she knew who was calling and what they were talking about. They immediately got rid of Fran. And then there was talk about a man named Frank Campana, who worked at Columbia and who had been a friend of another man named Pat. And then later, the name Falcone came up. And apparently, Falcone was known in the Mafia. And so these things were, slowly, basically came to the surface. And it was discovered that, in fact, there was stuff like this going on. There were Mafia ties that were exposed. And he was fired. Clive Davis was fired at the end of January, I think it was, in 1973, because it was a major international brown smuggling operation. Okay.
Yeah.
Brown. And that came into the light. And the bust, which reported $15 million, centered in Montreal. And then it involved a bunch of people, but one of them was, very close to Davis, Pasquale Falcone, called Patsy by his friends, who was a member of the Genovese crime family. And so if I say Genovese, does it remind you of Wexy or?
Well, you reminded me of the Colombian cartel because they were linked with Falcone as well, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so. And then we have the fact that, remember, in 1985, Wexy's attorney, Arthur Shapiro, took 2 bullets to the head, mob style, and that analysis that was discovered by then Columbus chief James Jackson destroyed all the evidence about the investigation because it linked 2 of the richest citizens of Ohio, meaning Edward DeBartolo Sr. and Leslie Wexner, to the Genovese organized crime family. So that we have now we have a straight line connection. I mean, there are many of them, frankly, but we have a straight line connection uh, to, let's say, from Wexy to Clive Davis, you know, pretty much almost at the same time. So Falcone, uh, clearly he was operating. It was a much bigger thing. I mean, there were operations in Canada, there were operations in Mexico. They were also, in fact, dealing with the so-called Black Mafia in Harlem. This was a big deal. However, David Winshaw, who was 52 and who was basically the right hand person to Clive Davis, was the person who took the fall. He was also fired. These guys were arrested. I'm going to say that Winshaw regrettably took the fall for Clive Davis, who was found to have been guilty only of, let's say, not paying his tax. He was fined $10,000. And, he didn't spend a day in jail. But of course, Patsy Falcone spent time in jail, as did David Winshaw, who was the vice president working alongside Clive Davis. But Davis, do time? No. He managed to get himself back in there, and he keeps going. And I would think that one of the things that he used was the wonderful blackmail he acquired to, help Paley overcome his, his stalling at, outing Davis and letting him take the fall. He wasn't going to take the fall, Davis.
Yeah, they've always got insulation.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost known, like around the office back in the day, that he was, meaning Winshaw, was his so-called procurer. I mean, we have this to present day where we have members of, who help so-and-so in the industry. They're called procurers. That's what Ghislaine Maxwell was called. And apparently Winshaw was that for Clive Davis. So anytime they needed something, they created a whole thing, Sean. It was called special projects. And it took care of providing any necessary, quote, entertainment for Columbia executives and favored guests, right? And so, come on. Is that not, can't anybody see right through that?
Mm-hmm.
And so people still think that Davis, who took meaning Winshaw, who took the fall for Clive Davis, were perhaps more than friends, if you will, right? Because why would he take the fall? Why, unless his life was threatened, which is a possibility. So then ultimately they had to say that, oh, no, Clive Davis didn't really do anything bad. And Winshaw, he went to jail for conspiracy with nobody, apparently.
They had to redefine conspiracy for that one, did they?
They have to redefine conspiracy for many things, so so all Clive Davis to present day says, oh no, I just forgot to pay taxes, or there was just some mess up with the paperwork. And it's no, dude, you were involved in the biggest H bust in history. And if you look at the various records, which I have looked at, it spans, like I said, multiple countries. It was linked to the literally the Black Mafia, the Italian Mafia, but any mafia in the world, Clive was attached to it. He had no problem with any mafia in the planet. Equal opportunity mafia, do business with. He's good with that. Allegedly. But no, there's enough paperwork that I don't have to say allegedly. But, there's a lot of pro clutching, right? So we saw Davis then after that, oh, I did nothing wrong. And then we see him having this wonderful documentary on Netflix, which is like an infomercial. And you know, I, I just I just can't anymore. Well, I don't know.
Who do you think was more connected, Robert Maxwell or Clive Davis?
Well, Maxwell had a specific role to play. Um, Clive Davis is a front guy. Robert Maxwell, even though he was handed the ability to have the newspaper for purposes of intelligence, was sort of in the back room, except that his ego got the best of him, so he would put himself on the front cover, on the front page, sorry, of all of his newspapers. But Davis, um, I would say, is a step under, let's say, somebody like him, like
People are
Maxwell.
people are asking what about Clive Davis's son?
Anyone who is, yeah, I would say, like father, like son.
Yeah. Right, we've only got a few minutes left for this episode, Kirby. Do you want me to give you the rest of the viewer questions, or do you want to
Sure,
continue?
sure. I'll do my best.
Okay, so we've got let's see, Stanley Kubrick first. Was Stanley Kubrick a white hat trying to expose the elites, or was he part of them?
He was part of them, and he worked with what he knew. He did. I don't think he really truly believed that he was um, saying too much because, let's say, for example, in Eyes Wide Shut, that was a recreation of a German novel called Tram Novelle. And so, you know, it just showed that this has been going on forever. So I don't believe necessarily that he was, quote, a white hat. He did leave clues, but I think he did this because other people in that same world knew those clues. I don't think he understood that one day there would be an internet and people like us devouring everything and sharing information. So, in the end, did he do us some good? Yes, because we can look at his films and get a lot of clues, but we can do that with almost any film, by the way. But he was one of them.
Okay. So next one is thoughts on Tom Hanks and his connection to the Rockefeller family.
I don't know enough to answer that properly.
Okay. So next one is what's the connection with HBCU Spelman College?
Again, I'm sorry, I don't know enough about that.
All right. Clive Davis must have had a friendship business relationship with Quincy Jones. Can you talk about that?
Well, Quincy Jones is part of the Boulay, you know, and of course, Clive Davis is going to be friendly with Quincy Jones. Um, okay.
Kirby, how deep is the fashion business tied up in all of this?
It's in the same level as the music industry, because all of the industries are tied up. If it's a big industry, you know, we see it through Leslie Wexner. He had fashion businesses. He had, let's say, Victoria's Secret. My abuser's father sold learner shops to him, geared at the newly liberated working woman. And the reason the working women were newly liberated, in fact, was so that the government could collect a second tax and so that it could keep breaking up the family unit so that women don't need men anymore. Men are disempowered because of the use of, let's say, pornography, and if you have a weak family unit, it is easier to control a family who is separated or who's never together at all. And then we have access, let's say, not just to destroy the man in the manner that we have been hearing through the use of SODOMY in order for them to move ahead, but we have access to their children.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw that method over and over again. We'll make you a star in this fashion industry, or Same thing. All right, so Roman Polanski your thoughts on Roman
Oh
Polanski?
God, I could be here for a day talking about Roman Polanski. Let's just say that he enjoyed the S word with 10-year-olds. He still doesn't think to present day that there's anything wrong with that. He did give, I think her name was Samantha, who we all know about. She was 13 years old at the time. It happened at one of the houses connected to the mansion that Hefner owned. He gave her $500,000, and then she wrote a book saying she has no hard feelings against Polanski. But with $500,000, what are you going to do? But nobody knows about the $500,000, right? Few people know about the $500,000.
What about Linkin Park and lead singer Chester Bennington's death?
Again, I don't know much about that.
Is Simon Cowell and Sir Philip Green involved?
I would only be speculating. I know that I have seen pictures of Simon Cowell with, let's say, a very young little girl from another country sitting on his lap. So that does not look good for Simon Cowell.
Wow. Thoughts on Jack Parsons?
I'd rather not.
All right. Do you happen to know about social services injustices and how they take children illegally?
Yeah, they do that. And there are enough people that have, you see, all of these agencies, they have people who infiltrate. And so, yes, that's a great place to get children and to take them away from their parents. So not just are the social services involved, the court system that presides, let's say, over the family court, they're involved too. So yes, I say that they are.
Has there been any exposure at all in Columbus, Ohio, with the child PDF rings?
Well, we saw that with, let's say, Jeff and his friend Wex, but nothing. Now, Ohio is strategically located with a lot of, you see it, it's connected to so many highways. And so there's just perfect for that word that you use that means transportation, right?
Was Polanski purposefully not at his house when the Manson family invaded in Laurel Canyon?
From my studies and from what I have been able to piece together, I believe that she and his child were in fact the offering. You have to make an offering. You have to make a sacrifice if you are going to be successful. He goes on to have the biggest hit, Rosemary's Baby. So I believe that he was not in the house because it was pre-planned.
Is Naomi Campbell a madame of the fashion industry?
Well, she is. She's certainly one of the people that is part of this. She comes up in every one of these things.
If we all know this, why does this not get investigated and prosecuted to the highest level, in your opinion?
Well, because the police are in on it. In my case, it was a police captain in Jeff's neighborhood who, my abuser didn't even know my name, didn't know where I lived, hired someone because I had been trafficked and that's how I met him, hired him, paid him, I forget how much it was, but paid him a 6-figure amount, captain of the police station, to find me for him. He knew my birth date and he knew what I looked like. And I was delivered to this man by the captain of Jeff's police station on a silver platter. And then even though I said no, no, no. So the police, we saw also in the Franklin case how the police were involved. The police are involved. Your public officials are involved. There's nothing that they can do. They will tell you they will do something. We heard Bill Barr say they're going to do something. They never did. That's all we will get. We will get empty promises. However, I believe that if we teach ourselves how to spot what a predator looks like, how to stay away from a predator, how to be self-reliant, how to trust your family, how to be suspicious of strangers who come on too strong. Anybody who gives you a compliment, question that. You know, I don't fall for compliments and I don't talk to strangers. You have to be very, very careful who you let into your life. And we can keep ourselves safe and prevent this from happening.
In your opinion, who and when is the next big indictment going down?
I don't know. It can happen anytime. I mean, every now and then we'll get something that happens, like we have recently, but these are few and far between, So from the Franklin situation, which became part of the news cycle briefly during Reagan's administration, when also George H.W. Bush, massive CIA asset, was vice president. We saw that for a millisecond in the news. However, then they said it was a hoax and they put the children in jail. Some of the children were actually eliminated, unalived. And then we waited a good number of years before Jeff came to our attention. And now we have other people come to our attention. We never know when one of these people will be kicked out of the club, let's say, and we, the public, get a smell of this. But we can, like I said, educate ourselves, keep ourselves and our families safe.
Thank you for the super sticker, Truthful Glow. Question from Lakey. Have the 80,000 out of the 300,000 kids really been found released?
I'll be frank with you. I don't trust anything I'm told by a public official, no matter who it is and or the media. So I don't know.
Thoughts on Anton LaVey?
Well, he, like Michael Aquino, uh, worked for this apparatus that is unseen. And Anton LaVey was, in fact, a vehicle for the intelligence apparatus in the UK.
Yeah, a very scary one.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do you feel about the current president? Do you feel he is exposing it all or putting up a front to still control?
So if you ask a survivor, and I'm a strong survivor, by the way, any survivor of this, we will tell you that both sides are controlled by outside forces, and therefore, personally, I don't trust. My abuser, for example, was very close with, let's say, Biden, very close with the Clintons, very close with Trump. I personally have faith in none of the elected heads of any country.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical as well, but hopeful that the freedom of speech thing was good that Trump announced. All right, so
If it
Richard,
happens.
if it happens, yeah, what they say and what happens.
Yeah.
Within days of that, I got a strike on Facebook. So
There you
Zuckerberg,
go.
yeah. All right, so Richard Hodson, Oprah and Ellen, how involved are they, and are they getting arrested, in your opinion?
No, they're getting a just you will not have to go to jail. Pass, go, we keep going. You're fine. There are some people that there's no reason to. We know Oprah did something very bad. We know about her relationship with what is it, John of God or whatever his name was, and her school that she opened that all had a scandal and it died down pretty quickly. So, no, I don't believe anything will happen to these two ladies.
Janie, Miss Kirby Summers, is your Substack still the best place to get your articles?
The number one place. I upload frequently, once a week for sure, sometimes twice a week. That is where my deep dives are, my nooks and crannies, my blood, sweat, and tears, and actually my pride, because I'm very grateful that I'm able to do this, and that really I've done it with the help of my followers. Who would have thought that I was trapped for years thinking, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why? And, working, and not being able to stop and really analyze everything. And then suddenly Epstein is arrested. And I have a huge following until Elon Musk buys Twitter, at which point he deletes my account. Oh yeah, I had so many, but I have been very blessed. I have the best followers on the planet, and they have kept me. I love what I'm doing because I've met so many great people. They've become my extended family, as you have, Sean. You know, it's like we can go without a year or two not talking, but I hear from Sean, oh yeah, okay, great, we're good.
We've been watching you from afar, and Matthew
Uh,
Steeples as well. Have you stayed in touch with Matthew
yeah,
Steeples?
he's a great guy.
All right. So next question. What about Isaac Cappy?
You know, when I came into this, I didn't really hear about somebody named Isaac Cappy until maybe the end of the second or the third year. But I do believe he was unalived, and whatever the last couple of videos, him saying he was, I believe he said he had done something wrong. I think he was unalived. I believe he just knew too much and he was saying too much.
Yeah, I did a few hours on it that was banned, but I'll see if I can get that one back up
Oh,
for the viewers. Let's see. Were you talking about Woody Allen?
Woody Allen is part of that inner circle. Some of his films are interesting. You will see that he will make films about the future. Now, the time travel element of this, as well as the mind control MK Ultra, are aspects of the CIA and the intelligence services in general. You will see that Allen has made films not just about, let's say, having a girlfriend who went to Dalton, which is quite interesting, right? I think it was Manhattan or something that he has that film, but he also incorporates elements of time travel. He incorporates elements that are only known to insiders, and so Allen is an insider.
Okay. And next question is, have you been following the Idaho 4 case?
No, no time.
Okay. Am I to believe that the models are not actually female?
Well, a lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't. In fact, some of your, I'm not going to name them, but some of your well known actresses and singers are not.
What about Simon Cowell's buffet?
Oh, I don't know. Tell me.
I don't know either. It sounds like dangerous territory. Murph wants to know what happened with Anthony Bourdain.
I believe, via the information I got from NT Lawyer, that Bourdain was in one of the cabins next to a, let's call him